Happy Triple Header Thursday, everyone. We've got videos dropping on JG8 and JG7 later today, so be sure to check them out. And now, on with our feature presentation. When you think of a scandal involving the Patriots and spying on an opposition's practice in order to gain an advantage, the first thing that probably comes into your mind is SPYGATE. I'm not going to dive into the specifics of it, since it's a touchy subject, since there's a lot about it that is objectively false, like the Boston Herald report that had to be retracted later about Super Bowl 36. And there's a ton of materials and articles and documentaries and videos out there about it already. But to make a long story short, the New England Patriots were caught videotaping the New York Jets signals, and as part of the NFL's investigation, the Patriots were fined $250,000, with head coach Bill Belichick being fined a whopping $500,000, and with the team losing their first-round pick in the 2008 NFL Draft. The scandal rocked the NFL world, and for many people, it's still the first thing that they think of when they think of the New England Patriots. That's how big of a deal it was. It transcended the sports world and made its way into the mainstream media. However, what you might not realize is that this was not the first time there was a scandal involving the Patriots and spying on the opposition. In fact, it happened in the team's very first game that they ever played. But this time, it wasn't the Patriots doing the spying. Rather, they were the victims in all of this. Of course, the very first game in the history of the American Football League had to have its fair share of controversy and drama. Because in 1960, when the Boston Patriots played the Denver Broncos, the game was marred by what you might call the original Patriots Spygate, although I guess it would be reverse Spygate because the Patriots were the ones getting hurt by this. Because more than 60 years later, this is the story behind the forgotten scandal. Before I talk about the actual scandal in question, we need some context to understand the man who was doing the spying for the Broncos, none other than Frank Filchock. Before he became a coach in the AFL, he was a very good player for a very long time, playing 8 seasons in the NFL, leading the league in touchdown passes in 1939 and 1944 as a member of Washington, and even making it to 2 Pro Bowls. In fact, in 1944, by just about every metric possible in passing, including passes completed, passing touchdowns, passer rating, and yards per attempt, Filchock was the top-rated quarterback in the league. However, his playing career was marred in controversy and scandal, which would be a nice predecessor to his time as a coach in the AFL. Mainly, when you think of the name Frank Filchock, you think of his role in the 1946 NFL Championship, when a giant controversy surrounded him and the possibility that he might fix the game, as better Alvin J. Paris offered him $2,500 to not play his best in the game, plus an additional $1,000 if the Bears beat his Giants by more than 10 points. Now, this whole situation is a bit murky, and it's not the main focus of the story, so I won't dive too much into it. On one hand, the judge found that Filchock wasn't an accomplice in this, and that he played his heart out. On the other hand, he threw 6 interceptions in the game and continued to hang out with Paris. Eventually, Commissioner Burt Bell suspended Filchock, and Filchock never played another NFL game ever again, although he did play for a bit in Canada. Whatever your thoughts on Filchock are, and whether or not he actually fixed the game in some way, is still a topic of debate roughly 80 years later. However, it does give some context to the story that we're about to see here, because it's not as though Filchock was the squeakiest clean of guys. Eventually, Filchock became the inaugural head coach of the Denver Broncos, and his very first test in the regular season was against this team right here, the Boston Patriots, in what would be, quite literally, the very first game in AFL history, as it would be played on Friday, September 9th, with the other 3 games taking place over the weekend. And this was going to be a tall order, because by all accounts, the Patriots were heavy favorites to win this one. Yes, it was the first game ever, and you can't exactly tell how a team is going to do in the first ever game. However, there was some pretty good reasoning to believe that the Patriots would curb stomp the Broncos on the opening day of the season, aside from the fact that the game was being played in Boston. The teams met 1 month before in the preseason, and this was at a time where preseason games, to some extent, actually matter. The first stringers were playing, and the teams were trying to win. And in that game, the Patriots basically committed murder, as they decimated the Broncos by a final score of 43-6 in front of a crowd of 4,700 people at Mount Pleasant High School in Rhode Island. Boston was nothing short of dominant, leading at 28-0 at the half, and outgaining the Broncos 399 to 198 in total yardage, more than doubling their output. When you don't exactly have a large sample size to work off of, and the one game you do have to go off of, one team won by 37, then yeah, it's easy to see why the Patriots were heavy favorites to win their inaugural regular season game. As Gino Cappelletti, one of the greatest Patriots of all time, and an eventual 5-time NFL All-Star, would say years later recounting the game, "We beat Denver easily in an exhibition game, so we were confident when we got to play them in our home opener." And Las Vegas felt the same way, seeing as the spread for this game was a whopping 16 points. For some perspective, the average spread across the other 3 games that week was 5.8 points, which makes sense that it's close and one possession, because we don't know much about the teams. The preseason games aren't on TV, and these are brand new teams that have never played competitive football before. But with the Patriots over the Broncos, yeah, it was a surefire thing. It seemed like nothing was going to stop the Patriots from winning. So how do you beat a team that is better than you and beat you by 37 points a month ago, even if the game didn't necessarily count? Well, you try to get an advantage any way you possibly can, even if it means bending the rules a bit and doing something that is, shall we say, highly frowned upon. Here was the game plan for the Broncos. They were going to arrive in Boston and would practice under the lights at Boston University on the night before the game. Get one final practice in before the game the next day, and run the plays and the scheme that you're going to run when it actually counts in 24 hours. Plus, you can get used to the lights, since this was a primetime game, so you want to know how to locate the ball and everything in this new environment. The Broncos would be the ones practicing first, and then they would leave the field to give it to the Patriots, who would practice later in the night. And after the Broncos held their practice, which was uneventful by all accounts, as nothing noteworthy happened, it was time for the Patriots to get their final practice in. And I'm sure you can see where this one is going. Oh man, I'm sure you can see where this one is going. Because even though the plan was to have the Broncos practice and then leave, while the rest of the team left and went back to the team hotel to rest up, one man stayed behind. That man? None other than Frank Vilchuk. As the Broncos were leaving, and Frank Vilchuk saw the Patriots walking onto the field, Vilchuk decided to take a detour and leave the team behind. He then worked his way around the stadium and found his way into the back of the stands. Now, the bizarre part about this is the fact that no one, not a single player or coach or staff member on the Patriots, realized this. It's not as though Vilchuk found his way into the press box or a locked-off location. The reports indicate that he just went to the top of the stands. The stands were supposed to be empty, and here was a man just sitting there, and not one person stopped to ask, "What are you doing here?" Not one person asked, "Who are you?" or "Why are you watching this?" And not one person stopped to question what was going on. Maybe they thought nothing of it. Maybe they thought it was someone on their own staff or a stadium worker. Or maybe they were just that oblivious to the fact that there was a person in the stands who, considering the attendance in the stands was 1, should have stuck out like a sore thumb. Regardless, Vilchuk stayed for the entire Patriots practice, taking notes and watching intensely everything that Boston was doing. And when the practice was done, Vilchuk went back to the hotel and told his players everything. He told them all their signals, he told them all their plays, and he told them everything that they were going to do for Friday night's game. The only reason the Patriots eventually found out about it was because later on, a player joined the Patriots from the Broncos and that player spilled the beans. Who that player was, it's never specified. However, if I had to guess, I'd say defensive end Bill Dannenhauer, the 17th round pick of the Baltimore Colts from 1956, probably makes the most sense, seeing as he played for both the Patriots and the Broncos that season. However, that's just an educated guess. As Gino Cappelletti said, later, I found out what happened. We came into practice the night before the game and adjusted to the lights at Braves Field. Denver had practiced on the field right before us and had left. At least, we thought they'd left. Later, I found out from one of their players that Frank Filchuk, their coach, was the last one leaving when he saw us come out on the field to practice. So he sat up in the back of the stands and watched everything we did. He saw what we were working on with our offense and our defense. He went back to the hotel and told the players what we were going to do. Regardless, the Broncos now had the formula for beating the Patriots. And as you've been watching with these highlights, that's exactly what they did. Because to the shock of just about everyone in attendance, especially those who came out to watch the Patriots play the Broncos in Rhode Island a month before, this game was nothing like that. Nothing at all. Because this time, when it mattered, and when the final whistle sounded, it was the Denver Broncos who emerged victorious. This time, in the very first game in AFL history, the Broncos etched their name into the books and won it by a final score of 13-10, thanks to a 59-yard touchdown catch by Al Carmichael, who scored the very first touchdown in league history, and a 76-yard punt return for a touchdown by Gene Mingo, in what was the first and only special teams touchdown he would ever score in his career that spanned all the way until the 1970 season. Remember how in the preseason game, the Broncos didn't even have half the yardage that the Patriots did? Turns out, when you know what's coming, that's not so much of an issue, as this time around, they had 323 yards of total offense compared to just 219 for the Patriots. In the preseason game, the Broncos had just 28 yards rushing. This time around, they had 149. In the preseason game, the Broncos allowed 290 passing yards. This time, they allowed 140. This was one of those games that was not as close as the final score might indicate, as Denver thoroughly dominated. And no one knew what happened. No one knew how to process this. The game recap in the Boston Globe the day after the game said that this was possibly stage fright with a tint of overconfidence, considering that the Patriots were 4-1 in the preseason, and the Broncos were 0-5 and got outscored 200-54, while also saying that this wasn't the same Denver team that went through the motions last month. Well, now we know why. Even Lou Saban, the head coach of the Patriots, was stunned, saying, "It was a shocker I might have been expecting all along," while also acknowledging that they knocked them off so easily a month before. And obviously, just because you have all the plays and the signals and the signs doesn't guarantee a win or that you'll play well. You could put me out there at quarterback against Justin Jefferson, and I could know exactly where he's going to run, and I'm still not going to be able to stop him. But it definitely helped. And if it wasn't for that player eventually spilling the beans to Cappelletti way after the game took place, this would have flown completely under the radar. No one suspected anything at the time. However, it's funny that the first ever game in the wild history of the AFL was a wild one featuring a SPYGATE scandal of its own. Because in 1960, the Broncos won the first ever game played in the Mickey Mouse League, even if it might have had a giant asterisk next to it. Get your official Jaguar Gear 9 merchandise by going to jj9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out a lot. Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL Trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of college football, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.